Hello and welcome to day 6 of the trip, which is actually day 5 of cycling. Today we go from Ghent to Bruges. I'm just going to cover the cycling part of the trip today, and I'm going to do another video where we cover the sights of Bruges separately, because there's a lot to see there. In contrast to the weather on day 4 of cycling, today is beautiful with sunny weather and no wind. To start this morning, the barge is actually moored at the confluence of the Ringvaart and the Ghent-Bruges Canal. We spend the entire day riding along the canal that goes to Bruges. Here we are traveling down one of the streets in the town of Lovendegem. We're headed to the castle of Lovendegem.
This is a private castle.
Nada como ter uma vinícola, hein? É, uma boa. Esse é o seu ideal de vida agrícola. Olha, e o cara que a gente pegou o barco, era dono daquela Louis Roderer, da Champagne.
After our brief stop at the castle, we travel off into the countryside, taking a little bit of a side trip away from the canal to see typical farmland in Belgium. Here you see on the right quite an operation. That's a big pile of stuff. And the farmer seems pretty friendly. Stop recording. You can see here we made it back to the canal. This is a very nice path along the canal, and it's quite busy in places. Because there's no wind, which is quite rare in this part of Europe, I believe, you'll notice beautiful reflections on the canal water as we travel along. Here our Brazilian friend is asking the guide about some berries he found connected to a tree along the way. As a result, I got a little bit distracted and didn't really notice the beautiful field of sunflowers on the right, but I've slowed the video down so we can get a little bit of a glimpse. I wish we'd stopped and taken actual photos, because it was a beautiful field. Here we've run across another boat and bike tour heading the opposite direction. They've stopped at a little vending area that local farmers use to sell their produce, including these beautiful strawberries. They were very tasty, and most of us got quite a few. We ate them right there on the spot and took some along to have later on. I'm a little embarrassed because here you see the wonderful camera work you get when you leave the camera on top of your helmet and take your helmet off. The perspective's a bit off and we don't get to see anybody's face very well. I'm sorry.
Here, Will I am. Oh my God, look what you bought.
Oh my.
No, that's what they
Hold still, Johnny.
Want some?
Oh, I'll take a couple. Thank you.
Sì, sì.
They are called white blues, so they are almost the Milka cows. But Belgium is very famous for these cows. The white blues, very famous cows. And these cows, if I say something wrong, you should correct me, because you know. But these cows, they were bred after World War II because at that time there was too much milk and too little meat. And as you see, they are huge. They have a lot of muscles. The meat is very juicy, very lean, and it's one of the bigger export products of Belgium because these cows are very often used to breed with because it's very good meat. So if you are having dinner tonight in a restaurant in Bruges, you might want to ask for beef from these cows because they are really good.
Blue?
White blues.
White blue. White blue.
And they are not always white blue because 40% of them are just white. But they have, you know, the big necks and they have lots of muscles.
As a side note, I did try some of this beef that night in a restaurant in Bruges.
GoPro, stop recording.
After meeting the farmer and his nice herd of Belgian white-blue cattle, we're back on the path, going through a nice little wooded area, which is not too far from the canal. But there you can see there's areas for picnicking, and eventually we get to a place where one of the groups is going to stop for lunch.
Oh, I see it. Stop for the walnuts.
But we will make place for you.
Yeah, I wish you
we are
would.
leaving because
We're leaving.
I wish you would all take off.
oh no.
Here, Bob, have a strawberry.
Oh, thank you, sir.
See?
So you went to the machine as well?
You want us to take off?
Strawberry. Well, we start.
There's apple juice.
I probably should explain. When I say that one of the groups is going to stop for lunch, the other group, upon the suggestion of our Brazilian friends, is going to skip lunch this day and push on to Bruges and eat there in the early afternoon, rather than spending the half hour leisurely sitting in the shade and enjoying this view.
GoPro, stop recording.
As I look back through these videos, I realize that we did have a very beautiful day this day, and I'm very thankful that we got to enjoy this weather on this beautiful trip along the canal. Here's an example of why Belgians are some of the best cyclists in the world. And just like that, zoom, he's gone.
Like this one, from here all the way down to Normandy.
This is a World War II bunker.
And they were
Right back. Right back.
The reason they are here is for an operation called Hitler at that time was attacked UK as well. And Hitler was focusing on Russia, but it was good news, right? So he never really attacked UK. And now this bunker is a bat house. So there are bats living in there. That's also why that fellow is there. And they live also in the poplars. And
Bikers, stand back.
yeah, brother.
Not out here. They're inside. This is a World War II bunker built by Hitler.
Because Bruges is by far the oldest city that we will see during this week. Bruges is a medieval city and the whole city is a UNESCO heritage. Bruges was founded in the year 900, so it's really very old. And then between the 12th and the 14th century it became very important, and mainly because of the harbor, but also because of the cloth industry. What they did, in the beginning they had a lot of sheep themselves, and they used that to make the Flemish cloth. It was very well known at that time. And later they also imported a lot of wool from the UK. And by that, but we've also seen the Lakenhallen in Ghent, so it was more often important for the wealth of the cities. But in Bruges, in the 14th century, Bruges was really very rich. Also, the royal family lived there at that time, and they were they were really party people because they had a lot of parades, a lot of parties. They liked art. They spent a lot of money. So also a lot of artists and famous architects, and a lot of other famous people. They all moved to Bruges, and that's why the city became so nice. But the reason it still is nice is another reason, and it is actually because in the 15th century, Bruges became the poorest city of the whole of Belgium. Wow! And in hindsight, that's very good news because they didn't have money to destroy buildings and build new ones, and they left everything behind, and that's the reason we still can enjoy those nice things. The reason it was not wealthy anymore because they did not have a harbor. I don't know if you know where Bruges is now, but it's not located next to the sea anymore. It's 15 kilometers away from the sea. And in the 14th century it was located next to the sea. There was still an entrance, but then it silted up and it became more and more difficult for ships to go to Bruges. So the whole the whole reason for them to become wealthy, it was not there anymore. And then the royals, they also left. And there were a lot of wars. There was a man which we will hear more about later, Maximilian von Oostenrijk. He became the big guy there, and he spent a lot of money on lots of wars. So taxes were increased, people became unhappy, and Bruges became, a very poor city. Then, in 1892, so it's 400 years later, there was this guy, Georges Rodenbach, and he wrote a book about Bruges. It was called Bruges la Mort, Bruges the Dead One. But that was a very, very famous book. It was, it talked about Bruges as if it was a very mysterious city with beautiful buildings, and that. That book that sold very well, so lots of people read it, and a lot of people wanted to see that famous that city. So Bruges, just for that reason, became a touristic city, and that gave a lot of money again to the inhabitants. Then a couple of years later, they thought,
when was published the book?
1892. Yeah. Then 4 years later, they decided that they would build another harbor. So now you have Bruges, but you also have Zeebrugge, Sea Bruges. And that's a little city located next to the sea with a harbor, and that now is the harbor of Bruges. So now Bruges, most of the income of Bruges is from tourists, but also the harbor is very important still, and especially for traffic to the UK. But also, if you go to the harbor, you see a lot of roll-on, roll-off boats. So where import cars, and also if you want to travel with your car, you can also go on those boats. So that is, in short, why Bruges is so nice.
Thank you.
We don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
That's close to home.
Okay.
How long
So
does
let's,
it take from Bruges to UK by boat?
With a travel, it's with how do you call a quick one? I think it's not that long. It's
2 hours.
yeah, maybe.
Now I'm going to share with you a different version of this story that was related to us by one of our guides in Bruges when we stayed there. She was literally offended by the version that we were told in this little clip. She indicated that the reason Bruges got poor was because of an uprising. In the 15th century, the Emperor Maximilian passed a law banning celebrations in the city of Bruges. The people rose up and protested, killed his envoys, and eventually the prince himself was captured and imprisoned into town. During his imprisonment, they executed his finance minister, Langhals, which means long neck in Austrian, in front of him. When he was eventually ransomed off and escaped, he moved his capital to Ghent, imposed all kinds of taxes on the city of Bruges, and forced them to keep swans in the city in perpetuity as a punishment for killing Longneck. She protested adamantly that clearly Bruges residents are smart enough to dig a canal and save their harbor. The problem was the taxes made it impossible to fund a project.
In September 44, the Canadians came to free us in the Second World War, and it was a very difficult battle because at that time the Germans here, they blew up this bridge, and you know where we had not lunch but we had the snack, there was a boathouse there. So the Canadians, they borrowed rowing boats there to cross the
GoPro, stop recording.
the canal, well, it was a very well, they lost a lot of soldiers.
This bike path was wonderfully smooth and beautifully paved and surrounded by wonderful and beautiful old trees. Here we are on the edge of Bruges. All of the more modern buildings are out here on the outskirts, primarily along the canals and the major roads that connect the city to the rest of Belgium.
Bikers!
This is the bridge in Minnewater Park. It goes across a small lake, which is meant for lovers. It is the area where water actually enters into the canals inside Bruges. This was our first stop as we entered into the city. The park is named after a legend regarding a young woman named Minna, M-I-N-N-A, who fell in love with a citizen of Bruges who was beneath her social standing. When her father refused permission for the marriage, she ran away and hid in this park, and eventually tragically died. Allegedly, her lover, heartbroken with pain, buried her beneath the waters in order to preserve their love forever and keep her captive in the waters of this lake. Just a little warning, if you ever come to Bruges, watch out for these horse carriages. They're not going to stop for you. We walked into town and enjoyed a lunch of some fries and other snacks, and I enjoyed a strong Belgian blonde. Here's a little montage of photos that I was able to take in the city. There'll be a lot more of these in my video when I cover our stay in Bruges and all the different activities we took part in there. After walking around the city center for a while, we eventually made it back to the boat, which was moored in the harbor. Diana and I had an opportunity to take a little hot tub and relax before we met some friends for dinner. After dinner, I got some spectacular pictures of Bruges, but I'll show those in the video where I cover Bruges. My next video is going to cover our last day of cycling from Bruges to the North Sea.